This is Robert Glasper, and I rock jazz. Playing isn't a job. It doesn't feel like a job. I'm literally doing my hobby. I'm doing what I love to do. I grew up in church, and a lot of the most amazing musicians, especially young African-American musicians, come from church. You know, that's where we're bred. And a lot of our great musicians are stuck there because that's where they're used to being. They've been making money for years there. They're comfortable there. You know, why they don't get up and leave that, leave their, you know, they're making a certain amount of money a week, they're comfortable, they're good. But they don't reach for anything new. They don't reach for anything. It's just, it's a job, you know what I mean? So one of the things I try to do is to get young church cats to check out more music, to come check us out, talk to them, give them music, you know, have conversations with them about music, and so they could try to reach for something else because they're so talented. I feel like I've made it to where young people can say, oh yes, you mean I can play music that I like? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times you come up, especially, you know, if you went to a conservatory or any kind of music school, you feel like, you know, the music is a certain way, like, okay, this is jazz, this is what it sounds like. And you may love to play it, but there's a certain part of you that doesn't feel free. You know, it feels like, you know, you're always paying homage to something every time you play. You know what I mean? That's how I feel like when I hear a lot of people play jazz. It's like I feel like every time they hit the stage, they're paying tribute, which is fine in a sense, but at the same time, nah. At the same time, you have to make your own mark. You have to be free. You have to. That's what the music is about. It's about freedom. With Blue Note, when I first got signed, Bruce Lumbaugh called me into his office, and I walked in there and I had written out kind of like a little thing of what the record was gonna be, what I wanted it to be. And I started talking about it, and he was like, Robert, stop. He was like, you're the artist. I signed you. I trust you. Do what you want. And it's our job to sell it. When you become an R&B singer or something like that, your budget's gonna be $250,000. You know, that's on the low end, a $250,000 budget. They're gonna look to recoup all that. So they want you to make money. You know what I mean? So that's when they kind of try to control you. You know, Blue Note gives you like $7.50. So they're like, whatever. You know, that's a bag of Doritos and a Snicker bar. That is your, that's your budget. You know, that's a jazz budget. You know, we don't have, this jazz is not a lot of money. And it doesn't take a lot to make a jazz record. You know, you kind of go in and hit. You're not working with a million producers and have to pay that producer and, you know, all that comes with it, and videos and wardrobe, blah, 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 blah. So it's pretty easy. So they don't look for us for much. I mean, the music in itself just doesn't get enough respect. It's like we're doing music that's, you know, when you do music that has some integrity to it, that doesn't really, that's not really gonna sell. Or the, you know, the powers that be, they're looking at numbers and they're seeing like, oh, he's not selling 1 million records, so no, he can't do Super Bowl. They probably want to get people who are doing music probably that has less integrity because that sells more. I get a very mixed clientele. It's pretty much, I still have my older audience and I'm adding a younger audience to the older audience. The older audience are still coming, you know. I make that joke all the time, like, you know, I've seen so many times where I'll see like a young 17-year-old black dude and like an 80-year-old white lady sitting next to each other, you know, both bobbing the dilla or something like that, you know what I mean? And then I'll flip it around and play a standard, and then she's like, yeah, and then he's like, oh, okay. You know, they're both getting something that they both identify with. If I do a hip-hop club, that club has a whole different clientele than the jazz club has. Wherever I go, my jazz fans are gonna know I'm there. So it doesn't matter what venue. But I'm trying to get people who don't normally come see me play to come out. So it makes sense to just go to do another venue, and that venue has a whole different clientele. You know, I'm on their calendar, they're sending out emails to all these other people who has nothing to do with a jazz club. So I'll get the best of both, I'll get both, you know what I mean? And people will be more inclined to come check it out. My next project, I have a few different options in my mind. I'm thinking of which one I want to actually pursue first. You know, I definitely want to do another trio record. So I'm thinking I may do a trio record, like a live somewhere trio, for the Jazz Cats, and fulfill my need for that. And then I'm thinking about doing another album on the vibe of the kind of this one. Just having some guests, but even having guests that I haven't worked with before. You know what I mean? Because all this album was full of guests that I've worked with before on some level. But I want to do a record of people that I want to work with that I've never worked with before.